Oddly enough, I don't have. There we go. Okay, it is almost 10 o'clock. This is being recorded. I will give it a few minutes to let people join.
Also, David, just a heads up, I just got a few more comments within the last 30 minutes. I'm going to put it in the folder.
Thank you very much. Okay, so just to let everyone know, we are live. We are being recorded. We'll start this momentarily. I just want to give people time to dial in. Good morning, everyone. It's about 5 after the hour. My name is David Steinberg. I am the hearing officer for San Francisco Public Works. Nathan Otis is the clerk of this hearing. This hearing is being recorded via Microsoft Teams and will be available afterwards through a link on the San Francisco Public Works website, sfpublicworks.org. As this is a virtual hearing, there is no sign-in sheet, so if you would like to receive information about the results of this hearing, please send an email to the email address listed on the hearing notice. Also, there are people who are participating by dial-in. Please note that when you speak, there's a 20-second delay, so when it is time for you to speak, there will be a lag for people, just so you're aware of that. So this public hearing is being held to consider one item, that is order number 203208, to consider to further implement the requirements of San Francisco Public Works Code Article 25 by adopting objective standards for personal wireless service facilities. My job as a hearing officer is to gather the facts for the hearing, listen to your testimonies, and help our Director of Public Works make determinations. I will not be making any decisions today. Instead, I will forward the findings from this hearing and make my recommendations to the Director. The Director will make the final decisions. When the Director's determinations are made, the Department will notify you of them if you have provided contact information. The hearing will proceed as follows. I will ask Public Works staff to speak first and present the case. Then any member of the public or witness who wants to speak. Then the Department, if the Department would like to address any comments. Each speaker will have up to 3 minutes to speak. The clerk will monitor the time for all speakers and will indicate when the speaker has 30 seconds left. If you are a party that's proceeding, I will call on you to speak. At that time, dial 1 then 0 to indicate that you're ready to speak and will be recognized. If you're a member of the public or witness who wants to speak, wait for me to call for public comments, then dial 1, then 0 to put yourself in the queue to speak. You will receive a message that your line is unmuted when it is your turn. Comments and questions should be addressed to me and not to the Department or the applicant. If you cannot finish your comments within the allotted time, you may submit written testimony to me by the end of this hearing. If I feel that a question is warranted, I will ask the question. After all comments are completed, I will close the item. We will now begin the hearing. So, order number 203208, may I have Public Works make its presentation? You may have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, first time. Can you hear me? Let me.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Good morning. My name is Leo Palacios, and I'm from Public Works Bureau of Street Use and Mapping. We called a hearing today to adopt the objective standards, which will be the third time we actually hear this item. Article 25 of the Public Works Code, as amended by ordinance number 19019, requires Public Works to adopt objective standards for use and determine whether a proposed personal wireless service facility to be installed on a utility pole satisfies the applicable tier A, B, or C compatibility standard. Under Article 25, wireless carriers need permits from Public Works to install their personal wireless service facilities on utility poles. Most utility poles are wood and are owned by PG&E, also known as Pacific Gas and Electric. But PG&E also owns steel and concrete poles. Public Works no longer issues permits to install personal wireless service facilities on SFPUC, which is San Francisco Public Utilities Commission, and SFMTA, which is known as San Francisco Municipal Transport Agency agent poles. SFPUC and SFMTA license their own poles, and they have their own standards for design of the facilities on their poles. Again, this is only for PG&E poles. The proposed objective standards will enable Public Works to determine whether a proposed personal wireless service facility satisfies the applicable tier A, B, or C compatibility design based on factors that are quantifiable, measurable, and verifiable. Without the objective standards, the Planning Department, and in some case the Recreation and Parks Department, have to approve the design before Public Works could issue most permits. The objective standards were developed as part of a collaborative effort among city agencies, including Planning, Rec and Park, and the Department of Technology. These agencies worked with the carriers to develop the best design possible, consistent with the requirement of state and federal law. The objective standards, for the most part, are consistent with design the city has approved for years. The only difference is the addition of 5G antennas, which are new to San Francisco. The design is also limited to California Public Utilities Commission's general order, which establishes safety standards for utility poles. The city cannot require the carriers to use designs that would violate General Order 95, which is a California state. The objective standards are also intended to be consistent with Federal Communication Commission's regulations over the size and design of small cells. After reviewing the public comments that have been submitted in opposition to the proposed objective standards, I just want to briefly discuss our current procedures for issuing personal wireless service facility site permits and the city's limited authority over concerns about radio frequency emissions. Under federal law, the Federal Communication Commission establishes standards for RF emissions from wireless facilities. Under federal law, the city cannot deny an application for a personal wireless service facility site permit based on concerns over radio frequency exposure if the emissions from the proposed facility will meet the FCC guidelines. Additionally, under state law, telephone companies have a right to install their equipment on poles in the public right-of-way. Finally, as I stated, the FCC regulates the size of small cells and has required state and local governments to adopt objective standards. For these reasons, in Public Works Code Article 25, Order 201970, and this proposed order, the city is exercising the authority that is left to local government under state and federal law. We have imposed requirements and conditions to protect public safety, a paramount concern we take very seriously. An applicant is required to submit a radio frequency emissions report and a noise study signed by a professional registered engineer of the proposed equipment. These reports are reviewed by the Department of Public Health for compliance of the Public Health Compliance Standard and the FCC exposure limit. After the facility is in operation, the applicant is required to measure RF power density with the antenna operating power to ensure that the FCC public exposure level is not exceeded at any publicly accessible area. If the general public has concerns about the antenna and the potential radio frequency source near their dwellings, Public Works can require the applicant to measure the RF power density levels in nearby dwellings. If the applicant is unable to accomplish this task within a reasonable time, the public can contact Public Works, which is us, and will coordinate with the Department of Public Health to have a representative take measurements at their dwelling. Many of the comments also expressed concern about the 6-foot setback. This is a minimum and is intended to protect private views. It's not about RF emissions. Most utility poles in San Francisco are at least 9 feet away from any residence. As noted earlier, regardless of the distance, Public Works has procedures in place to ensure that the RF emissions meet the FCC standards. Other notable requirements in our current policies include applicants must show proof of liability insurance, proof of permission from the pole owner, which would be, again, PG&E, and a verified statement from a registered engineer of the structural integrity of the pole after installation. All approved personal wireless service facilities are reviewed by inspectors for the confirmation of the design. As I stated, an RF report for public health compliance is required post-installation, and the reading, again, is available to the public upon request. And again, if the public is still concerned, we could have more readings post-installation of the equipment adjacent to their property. The purpose of this hearing is also to provide a forum for stakeholders and members of the public to make comments on the objective standards. Based on the comments we have received so far, Public Works intends to make some revisions to the objective standards. We ask that the hearing be left open for 3 weeks for Public Works to finalize those revisions. With 2 weeks, Public Works will serve the revised standards to everyone that received notice of this hearing, any person that filed comments during this hearing, and any person who provides Public Works with an email or a post office address. We request that the public be allowed 1 week to file comments on the revised objective standards. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay. Okay, I'm just making notes. Okay. I also wanted to make a point. The department, or I received the notice of the hearing officer a number of comments, both for and against adopting the standards. Some questions were raised about requested a delay based on the public health emergency and the inability of people to attend those meetings. I just want to let everyone know that the notice of hearing and the availability of participation has been, we've followed the rules that the city attorney's office, the state, and the city have determined are proper. So this is a proper hearing. People have the ability to participate, whether it is through the Microsoft Teams for online viewing, or just by participating in the phone, as I see that we have a number of people who have called in. So the ability to participate has not been abridged. In fact, it's probably easier for a lot of people to participate by phone than trying to come down to City Hall, especially these days. So with that, I will open this up for questions and comments. If there are any individuals who are wishing to speak, I'm going to put this in the question and answer mode. Again, what you need to do is dial 1, then 0. It'll put you in the queue. I will call each person one at a time. You will receive a message that your line is unmuted, and then we'll begin. Again, as a reminder, there is a 20-second delay, so we'll start your time when you actually start to speak. Okay, so we'll now accept comments from the public.
Your conference is now in question and answer mode. To summon each question, press 1, then 0.
Okay, so again, if you wish to make a comment, dial 1 and then 0 on your phone, and I will call people in order.
You have 4 questions remaining.
Okay, first person, you are.
Hello, can you hear me?
Speaking. Yes, you are on. Go ahead, you have 3 minutes. Hello?
Hello, my name is Mark Hansen. I'm a network real estate project manager with Crown Castle. Thank you for the opportunity to speak about this important topic. Unlike the traditional wireless carriers, Crown Castle is a carrier-neutral provider of telecommunications infrastructure. Sharing infrastructure between multiple carriers is at the very core of Crown Castle's business model and also reduces site proliferation and therefore overall visual impacts. Certain aspects of the design guidelines currently being contemplated would have the unintended consequence of driving more wireless facility proliferation. For instance, one of the smallest cylindrical canister antennas that is capable of hosting more than one wireless carrier at a time is 24 inches tall by 14.6 inches in diameter. This antenna has a total cubic volume of approximately 2.3 cubic feet and is commonly deployed in a side-mounted configuration. The draft standard under consideration limits antennas to 28 inches by 15 inches in width and just 1 cubic foot in volume. This 1 cubic foot volumetric restriction for all side-mounted antennas on wooden utility poles would necessitate that a second separate facility be established on a separate pole with an additional and separate PG&E power meter and an additional antenna to host the second carrier. This additional site and equipment would not be needed if both carriers were to be co-located together on a single wood utility pole sharing a single power meter and antenna. The real-world result of limiting side-mounted antennas to just 1 cubic foot would essentially require that each carrier have their own dedicated pole, and this is not a desirable outcome for the community nor for Crown Castle, since this would prohibit the sharing of certain components such as PG&E power meters and antennas. Furthermore, the FCC allows for 3 cubic feet per individual antenna, not just 1 cubic foot as is being considered by San Francisco City. The draft standards also restrict all ancillary equipment cabinets to be no larger than 36 inches long by 16 inches wide by 10 inches deep. However, some state-of-the-art small wireless facility radios do not fit into this form factor even before being placed within a cabinet. For instance, Ericsson's 8843 radio, which is a current and common 4G radio, measures 18 inches long by 13.2 inches wide by 11.3 inches deep. In this case, the 10-inch depth limit would prohibit the use of this particular technology entirely. Although less effective radios do exist, it would require multiple nodes to cover the same geographic area that a single 8843 radio could. Therefore, the
30 seconds
equipment limitation being considered would also further drive significant site proliferation across San Francisco City. Furthermore, the FCC allows for up to 28 cubic feet for non-antenna wireless equipment per wireless facility. Another concern is regarding the 2 5G radio antenna limit per wood utility pole facility. Per the draft standard, only 2 5G antenna radio units are permissible, and the total combined cubic volume of the 2 units may not exceed 1.5 cubic feet. The FCC allows for up to 28 cubic feet of non-antenna wireless equipment and 3 cubic feet per antenna. So this standard would directly conflict with federal regulations. Okay. We respectfully request that revised standards allowing for shared infrastructure be developed collaboratively. Finally, Crown Castle would like to confirm with the San Francisco City Attorney's Office that these standards are strictly related to the establishment of new facilities, and that San Francisco City will follow the 6409 eligible facilities request process for modifications of existing facilities, so long as they do not surpass the non-substantial.
You have 5 questions remaining.
Okay, thank you. Your time is up. The next person, you are up. You should have received notification that you are able to speak.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, you are on. Your 3 minutes starts now.
Hello?
Yes, you are on.
Oh, my line is unmuted, but I don't hear any response from anybody.
Just go ahead and speak. You have 3 minutes when you start talking. The next person, you are up. Should have received notification that you are able to speak.
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
Yes. 3 minutes start now.
Great, thank you. So I am a resident here of San Francisco, and I understand that Mark was the first speaker who, I have no financial interest in this. Mark obviously works for an employer who wants to maximize installations for monetary purpose. I don't have anything against capitalism, but I want to establish that I'm a resident, and part of standards are set, especially by the California Supreme Court ruling. Mark kept talking about conflicts with federal standards. That is absolutely irrelevant. The Supreme Court, California, dictated last year that a city, with respect to its aesthetics, can make reasonable laws accordingly. So the prior testimony has a lot of flaws. I won't get into that. I think the biggest issue here is, at the end of the day, the standards aren't objective. They aren't objective enough. So if we look at the 4G wooden pole standard, for example, I appreciate the fact that the design preference ladder is in place. However, it is completely subjective and left to the carriers on what they do. What we should have is a standard where if preference 1 or 2 are not easily available, they move to a different pole. There are multiple poles on every block. And yet all this says is they can start by picking a pole that they prefer, easy installation, whatever it may be, and then they could pick whichever design preference 1 through 4 they want. And all they have to do is send a letter to Leo and DPW, quote, explaining why they can't do preference 1 or 2. That is completely subjective. There's nothing there that's quantifiable, measurable, as Leo said, is the standard for objective standard. There's nothing that says if you go from preference 1 to 2, you have to submit something quantifiable and measurable why you didn't pick preference 1. So the biggest thing that needs to be done here is, for example, make preference 1 and 2 where carriers go. It gives them freedom, it gives them choice to install, but make preference 3, 4, and 5 something that requires a bigger headache, such as 5 already does. Make 1 and 5, 1 and 2 the main ones, and then make everything else disfavored, 3, 4, and 5. Number 1. Number 2, and I know I have 45 seconds, is that there's nothing here that talks about poles in the area. Everything in the document talks about one pole. So by this, they could install a top on top of every pole in the city if they wanted to. A 10-foot tall top on every pole in the city, literally, if they wanted to, as written. That's a terrible objective standard. It needs to take into account the fact that many times, a few blocks away, there's already an installation that covers 20 city blocks. And this doesn't take into account other poles. It treats every pole in a vacuum, which defeats the purpose of an objective standard for a citywide ordinance. Those are my 2 main pushbacks here, and thank you for the time.
Thank you very much. Okay, just as a reminder, I know the technical limitations are sometimes daunting, but just as a reminder, there's a 20-second delay. So when you receive notification from the system that you are unmuted, go ahead and speak. You may not hear my response right away, but you will hear from the system. And you may put a little feedback on the last one. Make sure you mute your computer if you're also listening to it that way. So next person, I'm going to take you, and again, you'll have 3 minutes.
You have 5 questions remaining.
Hi, I'd like to make a comment. My name is Sarah Amanoff.
Okay, you have 3 minutes. Okay, you're on.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you again. For everyone, just as soon as you get the system notification that you are unmuted, go ahead and talk. Because of the delay, you won't necessarily be able to interact with me immediately. So go ahead.
Hello, my name is Sarah Amanoff. I'd like to make a comment. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead. Okay, Sarah seems to be having some problems, so I'm going to take the next person. And again, as soon as you get the notification from the system, you are on. You don't need to confirm with me because there'll be a 20-second delay. So
You have 3 questions remaining.
And Sarah, if you'd like to dial 1 and 0.
Hi, this is Cammie Blackstone. I'm Director of External Affairs for AT&T. Thank you for hearing this item today. AT&T does have a few concerns about the proposed standards. First off, the 5G antenna and radio unit size limitations. The requirement that each 5G antenna and radio not exceed 1.5 cubic feet is unlawful. Under federal law, each antenna is in a small wireless facility can hold up to 3 cubic feet, and the radio unit is excluded from that size calculation. The proposed size limitation incorrectly combines the 5G antenna and the associated radio unit Also, such a size restriction may violate the FCC standard for aesthetic regulation, which says that aesthetic requirements be, number one, reasonable, and that they are technically feasible and reasonably directed to avoid or remedy out-of-character deployments. Two, no more burdensome than those applied to other types of infrastructure deployments. And three, objective and published in advance. A combined radio antenna unit restriction of 1.5 cubic feet may also cause technical feasibility issues. We're also concerned with the special requirements for wood poles near parks. The proposed standards require that antennas must be side mounted. This requirement reduces the number of existing utility poles that we could use. Depending on the circumstances, sometimes a site requires extra height that precludes a side mount installation. We also have a concern with the proposal to limit the total volume of all ancillary equipment to not exceed 15 cubic feet. This requirement deviates from the FCC's definition of a small wireless facility, which permits up to 28 cubic feet of associated wireless equipment. And depending on the facts of a specific deployment, the restriction may violate the FCC standard for aesthetic regulation because the 15 cubic feet cap may be technically infeasible. So thank you for hearing me out, and we respectfully request you consider these points, and I'll submit them on email as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So again, I'm going to recognize the next person. You'll have 3 minutes as soon as the system notifies you that you are unmuted. And to Sarah, who called in before, we were able to hear you. So if you want to comment, please dial 1 and then 0, and you'll be back in queue, and we will recognize you. So the next person will be up now.
You have 2 questions remaining.
Hi, my name's Melanie Sengupta. I'm outside counsel for Verizon Wireless. Thanks so much for the opportunity to present our comments live. As you know, there have been a series of hearings on these design guidelines, and there have been 2 major changes in the last iteration which concern Verizon Wireless. The first is with respect to the 5G antennas, as the other carriers have also stated. The FCC precludes local municipalities from regulating certain aspects of wireless service. So for instance, the Telecom Act prohibits a city from unreasonably discriminating amongst providers of functionally equivalent services. And courts have also found that federal law preempts the city's ability to regulate the technical and operational aspects of wireless telecommunications service. So in this instance, the new guidelines run afoul of these provisions in their regulation of 5G antennas, allowing only 2 antennas favor carriers who use antennas that are 180 degrees and precludes those who use antennas that are 120 degrees. So limiting the number of antennas impermissibly dictates the type of technology the carriers can use and unlawfully discriminates against certain carriers. Also, the antennas are in a single shroud, so there's no legitimate aesthetic concern with respect to the numbers of antennas. With respect to volume, the previous draft had the FCC's allowable volume of 6 cubic feet, and the new draft limits the total volume to 1.5 cubic feet. Since the volume is regulated, it would be redundant to limit both the volume and the number of antennas. And so our proposed solution for DPW is that we request that DPW remove the limitation on the number of antennas, and instead of using the FCC 6 cubic feet as a limit, use 2 cubic feet as the antenna shroud, and our antennas will fit inside. The second major change from the last draft is with respect to ancillary equipment. Before, the regulations just regulated the equipment size and not the size of the cabinets. Now it's not clear to us whether the guidelines are regulating cabinets, using them synonymously with the term shrouds. But more importantly, we think that the shrouding requirement for the ancillary equipment should be consistent with those in the steel poles, both for MTA, PUC, and the PG&E steel poles. That way you get a consistent look across
30 seconds.
And we've detailed for you in an email on Monday some more reasons why the single shroud is a superior option to multiple shrouds. So our solution here is just to import the same language that you have with respect to the steel poles and the single shroud over to the wooden poles. And just as a reminder, these poles are regulated not only by the city, also by PG&E, the Joint Pole Association, the California PUC. So putting more of these impositions on the carrier, we don't have that much discretion to move these things around because there are so many regulations on these wooden poles.
Okay. Thank you very
so
much for
happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Okay,
You
next
have two
person.
questions remaining.
Next person is up. You are active now? Hello, is the caller there? I'll wait a little bit because of the lag, but you should be ready to go. Okay, it does not appear that the person is there anymore. I'm going to take the next person.
You have one question remaining.
Hello, thank you for hearing this item today. I am a teacher in San Francisco Unified School District, and I urge you not to make a decision on proposed regs 203-208. My name is Sarah Amanoff. I am greatly concerned there are no protections for schools. There is no comment on how long leases will be. The ordinance has no liability insurance and no inspection requirement for meeting FCC radiation limits. The fact that a small cell is already in front of Lowell High School, Galileo High School, and June Jordan High School next to the school garden is unacceptable. The public cannot go to community neighborhood meetings to learn about these important regulations. Another hearing must be held after COVID restrictions are lifted for us to meet safely in our communities and neighborhood organizations. The public is focused on safety from the pandemic virus and outrage of racial inequity, not on wireless regulations. This is supposed to be a public process, and the public is being prohibited from learning about this issue at the time. I believe having 4 antennas outside our window will most certainly decrease our property value, as well as be a blight outside our windows. This will expose residents and visitors to increased levels of radio frequency radiation, which has never been tested on humans and is proven to cause harm. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You have 0 questions remaining.
Okay, at this time, I do not see anyone else in the queue to speak. I will leave it open for a little bit to adjust for the lag in case anyone else would like to dial in. We did have one person who did not appear to be able to speak or did not realize that he or she was able to speak. So again, I'll leave this open for a little bit, and then we will allow the department we will allow people to, or the department to go. I'm just looking, there are some comments here. Let me just look here. Let's see, people are asking public comment to call in by telephone or via Microsoft Teams. Yes, again, if you are wanting to speak, the number to call in was on the, actually, Nathan, if you could put up the agenda again, please, just so that people can see it. There we go. coming up here a second, so we'll have that information again momentarily. And in the meantime, we do have one more person who has asked to speak. So again, the agenda item here is showing how you can view the video conference. However, if you want to speak, at the top of that second page, public comment call-in line again is 888-204-5984, and the access code is listed there. It's 992-7045. So again, we will I will recognize the next person. If anyone else would like to speak, again, you may dial in by using that number which was on the agenda and the notice. So the next person is being called.
You have one question remaining.
Okay, person, it looks like that person dropped off. So again, I'll give it a little bit here for it to catch up again. So again, we'll try one more time. And again, if you want to speak, dial 1. If you're on the line, the dial-in line, dial 1 and 0, and we'll recognize you for 3 minutes. So next person.
You have one question remaining.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead. There's going to be a lag. So when you hear the unmute, message, just go ahead and speak. Start the 3 minutes when you catch up. You are on. Okay, person is not, just dropped off. Again, there's a 20-second delay. Just when you hear the message that you have been unmuted, go ahead and talk. Dial 1 and 0 to be recognized.
You have one question remaining.
All right, I just heard that I'm unmuted, and so I'm giving a comment about a letter that we wrote to Mayor Breed yesterday. Hopefully this works, and hopefully you understand what's going on. Now, we have heard testimony from... Okay, it's impossible to know how this is working. This is an absolute terrible process with a 20-second delay. Zoom doesn't have this. Come on, let's get with this. All right, so now I'm going to continue on. So I've taken my other thing off, and I'm just going to talk. We've heard from AT&T and Verizon talk about the laws as if they really apply that way to San Francisco. What I'm going to try to outline for you is that we are in the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, and we are facing a very important decision that's going to come down probably in July of 2020, and that will be vacating all or a portion of 18-133, the Streamlined Small Cell Deployment Order. That's easy to figure out when you actually read the briefs and you listen to the arguments that were made on February 10th of 2019. There is no way that you should actually continue forward with this policy, because you have every right to actually stick with your decisions. 18-133 is a presumptive order. That means this only states the FCC's preferences. This is not self-enforcing. This was admitted by Scott Novick, FCC attorney, on February 10th of 2020. So what is going on? We have a bunch of people that are blindly stepping forward on a plan that is completely unnecessary. What can and should you do? You should actually institute a need test. That would actually establish if, in fact, there is a significant gap in telecommunications service. That would help you decide whether or not any of these poles should be constructed in the public rights of way. If people can make an outdoor phone call on Verizon or AT&T, then there is no need for such an antenna. This is all decided by Metro PCS versus San Francisco. You also have another great decision, went to the California Supreme Court in 2019, and that is T-Mobile versus San Francisco, and that says specifically that in your aesthetics police powers can include three important items. Incommoding the public includes noise, negative health consequences, and safety concerns. All of that can be used, and when you set your objective standards for Article 25, taking away people's appeals is unlawful. Actually having a process that's blessed by the SFPUC, that means there's no more appeal, that is unlawful. You cannot do that. You are now discriminating, and you are giving special favors to the wireless industry, which is strictly prohibited by the 1996 Telecommunications Act Conference Report. It says right in that conference report, we do not intend to give the wireless industry any special favors with respect to timing of any of these applications, meaning shot clocks are illegal. What else does this say? It says we never envisioned 50-foot towers in residential districts. This is the congressional intent of the 1996 Telecommunications Act, conveniently being ignored by everybody who's here trying to talk about this today. Hey, why don't you go back and read the laws and read the conference report that was recognized by the U.S. Supreme Court justices in 2005 and Abrams.
You have one question remaining.
Time is up, and taking the next person. Go ahead, please.
Wow, I wish I could give my time to the last speaker. He was brilliant. I think you should call back in and continue with what you were saying. I'd like to say that I'm a licensed realtor here in San Francisco. I live in the Sunset District, and I'm just going to change up what I was going to say, but we do need a need test, because everyone I have spoken with in the entire district here does not need it. Nobody wants it. Nobody cares. It's perfectly fine what we have right now. And the negative health consequences, and, you know, some people don't seem to care about that, but you can also look at how it's going to adversely affect our real estate values. People are already talking about moving to Marin. Marin has stopped 5G. Switzerland, Danville, there's other places, but they need more testing, which is reasonable. And I think that everything he said, and the other speaker prior, that this is an awful system. Obviously, we should be on Zoom, but why do this now? Well, COVID. We can't walk in and show our personal protest, and I believe that it, feels sort of scammy, to be honest. I only heard David Steinberg speak for just basically announcing his name, and then all of a sudden silence for 10 minutes until we started hearing some speakers. I don't understand what type of system this is. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You have 0 questions remaining.
Okay, again, I'm going to leave this open for a little bit to allow for the lag in case anyone else wants to try to call in. If they've not spoken before, you still have an opportunity, and then I will allow Public Works to make a response if they would like to. So again, I'll wait just a second here. If anyone has just joined us. Comments, all you need to do is dial the number on the order you have in front of you if you're viewing it on Teams. Otherwise, as I said before, the number is 888-204-5984. The access code is 9927045. Again, that was in the agenda, the announcement, and the postings. If you wish to speak, dial 1 then 0, and we'll recognize you. At this point, there does not appear to be anyone else who is indicating that they would like to speak. So at this point, I will allow Public Works, if it so wishes, to respond to any of the comments and make a final word. So representative from Public Works is now recognized.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to reiterate my last, just my ending comments of the brief. So again, this is a forum for the public to make comments on the objective standards and stakeholders. And even after listening to everyone's comments, Public Works intends to make some revisions to the objective standards. So again, we just asked that the hearing be left open for 3 weeks for Public Works to finalize those revisions. And within those 2 weeks, Public Works will serve the revised standards to everyone that received notice of this hearing, any person that filed comments during this hearing, and any person who provides Public Works an email or post office address. Again, we request that the public be allowed 1 week to file comments on the revised objective standards. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. At this time, I'm going to close this item, and if there are no more comments to this item, it is closed. I will make my recommendations to the director. So there being no further comments, I'm closing this hearing. This hearing is now closed. Thank you all very much for participating. As I said, a recording of this will be available through the Public Works website. And if you have any additional questions, please contact the email address that was on the hearing notice.